Hey guys, it's Rick from Rick's Bricks. I've been running a BrickLink store for over 17 years and thought that now that I'm retired and have some time on my hands, I would create a vlog to show you how I operate my store and offer some advice and tips for other sellers along the way. I've also been running a store on Brick Owl since 2017, so I'll incorporate my experience using that marketplace as well. I hope to create at least one video each month going forward, showing you things like how I store my items, update my inventory, part out sets, and pick and ship orders. Please provide feedback, as you probably can tell I'm very new at this. Also, please give me some suggestions for future topics for videos, and post any questions about how I run my store. Let me give you some background about myself and how and why I started selling on BrickLink and later on Brick Owl. I'm way too old to have had Legos when I was a kid, but I did get exposed to them on many occasions when I would watch my two nephews for my sister, and then many years later when my son got really into them. When my son was about 5 years old, I'd say about 19 years ago, I bought a few storage tubs full of used Legos from a neighbor's rummage sale. So we dumped them out on the floor and started looking through them, and I began to notice several very unique looking parts and wondered if I could find all the parts, we might be able to build some of the sets that those parts came from. Then I was curious if I could find any information on the internet that would show me the list of parts that were in a set. I was amazed at how much data there was available at the time. The first website I think I looked at was called Peeron, Peeron.com, which I believe is still around today. I think it was one of the first sites to come up with a Lego part catalog with part codes within categories. It also had data on what parts were in many known sets at the time. As an experienced software developer, I downloaded or screen scraped the data into a database and created an application to track all the parts we had. I then created a process to show which sets we had the most parts for, and then we started building those sets. It was when I tried to find the parts we were missing that I discovered BrickLink, and for several months I bought the missing parts needed, and we completed several sets. I started thinking that I could use the same process to restore Lego sets and sell them on eBay. So for about a year I did that, buying bulk used Legos off of eBay, loading all the part data, pulling the parts from the sets I had the most parts for, buying the missing parts on BrickLink, and selling the completed sets on eBay. What I discovered was that, number one, it was a lot of work, and number two, I wasn't making much profit. I used several different storage containers when I started, but eventually started buying the Acromills small drawer storage cabinets. I had amassed about 45,000 parts, with many of them duplicates, and that seemed to be growing all the time, no matter how many sets that I restored. It was in December of 2006, when I had to burn 3 weeks of vacation before they ran out for the year, that I decided that it was time to open up my own BrickLink store. After translating all the inventory data from the Peeron item codes to the BrickLink item codes, updating my prices by screen scraping the price data, and uploading all the data to BrickLink, I finally opened up my store. At first my intent was just to supplement my income while continuing to restore sets for sale on eBay. If I remember correctly, there were well under 5,000 sellers in the US on BrickLink at the time, and I think a new store with a little over 45,000 parts to start with was a bit unusual. I remember initially getting many orders and having to increase my prices so that I could just keep up. After a few months, the number of orders kind of leveled off, but I realized that selling on BrickLink could be much more profitable, however very time-consuming, than selling restored sets on eBay, which I soon stopped doing. I continued for several years selling only used items while buying and sorting bulk used lots, mostly on eBay, but also from some local yard sales and from Craigslist. Throughout that time, I maintained an inventory of around 80 to 90,000 parts. Sometime in 2015, I started selling new parts from parting out sets, and I discovered you have a lot less customer service issues and much less time adding inventory selling new parts. So in 2017, I sold off all my used parts on eBay and switched to selling only new parts. I still believe there's better profit margins selling used parts, but it's the labor involved that can eat into that. Maybe someday, now that I'm retired, I'll try it again. Along the way, I kept improving my software to make running my store more efficient and adding features to update my inventory data directly on BrickLink, using some web browser automation techniques instead of having to constantly upload XML files using the BrickLink website. I tried using Brickstock for a while, but found that my software was better suited for my needs. When BrickLink released its API sometime in 2014, I think I was one of the first software developers to start using it, which proved to be much more reliable than the web browser automation techniques I was using. Eventually, all the BrickLink integration points in my software were changed to use the API. In 2017, I started working on an entirely new version of my software that I intended to eventually offer to other BrickLink sellers to use. I named it BrickSeller. It's now used by over 37 sellers on BrickLink. Over the years, I made many enhancements to it. Most of those enhancements came from feedback and requests from existing users, including the integration with Brick Owl. If you're not familiar with BrickSeller, you can find a link to it on the links page on BrickLink under Inventory Software. And I'll be showing how I use BrickSeller in many of my upcoming videos. Well, I think that's enough, maybe too much in the way of introduction. Rest assured that you won't have to see my ugly face much in the future, as I plan to use a forward-facing camera most of the time. Please look out for my next vlog, which will be a full tour of my store that I hope to post within the next few weeks. Thanks for watching.